Welcome back to the JB Sports Podcast. Today is Saturday, March 7th, and we're back for another pod. And let's see, Jason isn't here today. For anybody who's been around for a while, you know that's my podcast co-host / brother. I told him earlier on this past week, well, I guess this isn't the past week, this week, that I podcasted on this past Sunday, and I'm like, okay, fine, I'll probably do one more maybe this week. But I told Jace, like, hey, don't worry about it. We don't have to necessarily set up a time, because I told him for sure we'd have to do a pod next week when NFL free agency hits and all that, because we know just things kind of go haywire when it comes to free agency. But as this week has gone along and more moves have started to come out, because in the back of my brain, right, I was thinking, okay, it's pre-free agency. Teams will make moves and stuff like that, trades and all of that, but I didn't think it was going to be anything big enough to really go crazy for and have to have Jace on. And in the back of my mind, I was like, maybe if nothing else like crazy happens, maybe I can just wait, not do a pod this week, and just do one on like Tuesday or Wednesday next week with all the free agency stuff comes out, and kind of like do it all in one. But as this week has went along and more things have happened, it's kind of forced my hand to where I'm like, unless we were going to do like a 3-hour pod this next week with all the free agency stuff and then all these moves that happened this past week, that it made it very important for me to come on here and to do a pod literally just based off all the moves, all the pre-free agency moves that have happened. Nobody has really been signed like to new teams or anything yet, but so many things have happened that I felt like I had to do a pod just to kind of get all this stuff out the way. And then once we have Jason on next week, I'll get his reaction like to some of like the more important, the big ones that have happened this week. And then we'll go along with like reacting to all the new stuff that happens. Well, I think Monday free agency, like what do they call it? The tampering period begins for 2 days. And then Wednesday, I believe the 11th is when the new league year starts, where like everything actually goes through, even though when it comes to like the tampering period, like for the first couple days, stuff happens, players agree to contracts and all that, even though contracts aren't finalized and put through until Wednesday. And even players that are announced to be like released and everything, all of that cannot happen until Wednesday of next week. So everything that I talk about today when it comes to players getting released or anything like that, they are not released. If they're already with the team and they're announced to be released, that will not happen until next Wednesday. And then the trades as well. The trades technically, or trades or anything like that, can't necessarily go through either until Wednesday. But if the teams have agreed and it's all the news have come out, it's pretty much locked in. Stuff has happened in the past where they've come to an agreement and things have changed. Like that stuff has happened before. But no trades can go through, right? Can trades go through before the new league year starts? Hold on, let me look that up because now I'm crazy. Can trades be made before? I think they can. New league year. Okay, so even the trades and stuff can't be finalized until Wednesday. All right, so literally all the moves that I talk about that have been done this past week, it's all based off news, and nothing has really been like signed in paper and like really finalized until Wednesday hits. So, you know what's crazy is as long as I've been watching football and all this stuff, there's still things and rules and stuff that I miss all the time that I'll have to go back and look at to make sure I know what I'm talking about here. But there's so much that happened. I have 2 pages worth of stuff just to kind of react to and all of that. So I'm like, I have a lot to do. So I don't necessarily want to do too many things outside of this because this is the main reason for me to come on to do the pod today. But I do have to talk about one thing outside of all the NFL stuff because really that's what's going to dominate this pod today. It's Jason Tatum. Last night, I'm not sure if you watched it or not, or if you're into basketball or not, because if you're not, I totally understand. Basketball's one of those things that I'll be locked in at times. Sometimes I won't be. As of right now, I'm pretty locked in watching a lot of games. As of recently, I kind of got into that on the last podcast I did because I've been doing more and more betting on NBA games that have kind of kept me locked in. Nothing crazy, nothing close to what I do with the NFL, but it has been enough to where I have like gotten myself into like watching more games and like being a little more present on the day in, day out in NBA action and stuff. But last night, Friday night, it was Jason Tatum made his debut ever since he had the injury Was that in the playoffs last season? I think that was in the playoffs, right? I'm pretty sure that was in the playoff. That when did Jason Tatum get hurt? Let's see. I'm pretty sure that was a playoff game. Jason Tatum injury. Let's see. He played last night. When did he get injured? Injury date. May. Okay, so he did do it in the playoffs against the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals. Semifinals. Sorry, this is not the finals. Semifinals. So he got injured in the semifinals against the Knicks on May 12th of last year. And then it was a torn Achilles and all of that. So everybody was like, okay, he's going to follow the Kevin Durant timeline. Even though he said from the get-go that he was planning on coming back this year. And everybody's like, that's kind of crazy. You shouldn't do that. You just got paid a bunch of money. Like, that shouldn't be something that you should be trying to do, because I think the going sentiment for Achilles injuries is kind of like the Kevin Durant timeline, to where he didn't play for essentially like a year and a half. He didn't play for like a whole half season, and then he didn't play for the next season totally. So he didn't come back for a while. It was like a little over a year, right? So everybody was kind of claiming, like, even though KD was a little bit older when it happened and all of that, but people were kind of like placing that on Tatum. It was like, hey, he's probably not going to play this year. And everybody kind of said that the Celtics are probably going to suck this year without him, and it kind of hasn't worked out that way. Celtics are in the top half of the in the the East standings, so like they're still doing very well. Jaylen Brown has been doing very good. I think he's been in the MVP discussion because of how well he has played this year and kind of taken a step up without Tatum around and kind of leading this team and keeping them relevant in the standings. And then it finally came around, like, I think like a week and a half ago, like news started coming out that Tatum was probably going to get back to playing, and like sooner rather than later. And then the news just kept getting louder and louder until finally it kind of comes out like 3, 4, 5 days ago that like Friday it's probably going to happen and Jason Tatum's going to play. And this is, what is this? How many months after getting injured? This was in May of last year. So February, March. So like 10 months after getting that injury, he's coming back and playing on last night. And here's the question, right? Before I get to how he actually played last night, and it was pretty good. Spoiler alert. Should he have? Should that have been his plan? Should that have been what the Celtics let him do, is to let him come back? Because again, at the end of the day, for Tatum, I understand why he wants to come back. He's a competitor. After what had happened in the semifinals last year, he kind of wants to get raring back. And as an athlete, he wants to get back to playing. And again, what he is a basketball player. He has said that plenty of times. So he doesn't feel like himself when he's not playing on the basketball court in the NBA on a night in, night out basis. Okay? His side, I totally get it. Not to mention the fact that he's been paid already. It's not like he's looking for a new contract anytime soon. Like, I think he recently signed a contract. So I think he's secure when it comes to the money he's getting. That is not a problem for him, right? But for the Celtics side, they have a new ownership group as of recently. I think over the last year or so. Tatum has still many years of money left for them to have to pay him. That's fully guaranteed. That's pretty much how NBA contracts work. So for me, or at least when it comes to like the NBA fandom at large, the question is, why would the Celtics let him go out there and do that so soon after the injury? Because again, the more time that goes by after an injury and after the surgery, the better you'll be, the more you'll get back to 100%, and the less likely that, at least when it comes to general knowledge, the longer it goes, the better off you'll be, the stronger you'll get and everything. So why would the Celtics let him take this chance and to try to go out there and play this early on when they still they put so much resources into keeping him, retaining him, so much money and all of that? At the end of the day, I don't think the Celtics thought they were going to be as good as they were without him, at least so far this season. They're still winning a bunch of games. I think when it comes to the NBA standings, let me get the... Boston is number 2 right now. They're 42-21. They're 3 games behind Detroit at the number 1 spot. I don't think the Celtics, with their ownership group and even their fans, truly believe that they were going to be this good into this season without Jason Tatum playing all this time. I really don't think so. So I think on one hand, that is one thing. Like, hey, we're already so good, and then we have a chance to get Jason Tatum back, especially when the East does not seem like a gauntlet of teams to have to deal with. Detroit has been very good, but they don't have a lot of experience in the playoffs. So, like, that's one kind of like a team that still needs to grow in the playoffs, and who knows whether they're going to be able to take that step to, go from not winning any playoff games a year ago or these past few years to getting all the way to the finals and like doing all of that. So who knows if they're going to be able to take that step this year. And then the Knicks behind in the number 3 spot behind the Celtics, like I think the Celtics just know how to face off against the Knicks, even though I do think the Knicks is a bad matchup for the Celtics. I just think the Celtics feel like they have the advantage over them. And then Cleveland's in the 4 spot with now James Harden. So that makes their team a little bit better, but I think defensively they're not good enough. And I'm not sure if the Cleveland's going to now get so much better with Harden in the playoffs when we all know Harden is at his worst when he's playing in the playoffs. So, like, who knows if that's going to be the team. And then you have Toronto and Philadelphia behind that. So, like, those teams, you like if you're the Celtics, you don't have to worry about. So I understand the idea that as a team and as an organization, getting Tatum back when you're already looking very good, and really the only team you really have to worry about is Detroit and maybe the New York Knicks. I can understand if the Celtics are like, hey, we never expected to be this good, and now if Jason Tatum is raring to go and trying to come back, and we can slow play it, and he doesn't have to play a bunch of minutes right away, and he can kind of like ease his way back through the end of the season and hopefully be closer to where he needs to be by the time he gets to the, let's just say you have 85% of what Tatum can be by the time you get to the playoffs, and you have him be your guy, along with what Jaylen Brown has done in upping his game to be the player he has been this year. What's stopping you from getting all the way to the finals and potentially winning a championship? So, like, that is one reason why I can understand maybe the team being willing to take this chance with Jason Tatum. Tatum is already raring to go. So, like, literally the only thing that can stop him is the Celtics pretty much saying, no, you're not going to play by any means necessary. And I just think the spot they're in right now, how good they are, I just think it's going to be very hard. Because as an organization, I do think the Celtics are one of those teams that historically are just known for winning, and their fans demand it and all of that. So I just feel like all in all, it's a little bit too much going well for the Celtics right now. Especially if they can ease Tatum in and not have to play him full minutes right away, he can kind of ease himself into the season. I mean, into playing shape and all of that. I can slightly understand not talking about worrying about like the money and all of that, and how much they have resources they have poured into him. If you're just thinking about winning basketball, I could totally understand the Celtics letting Tatum go out there and do this, even if it comes a little bit of a risk. And I think we all have to kind of have an agreement here that they're not going to let him play if there's any doctor on either side of this argument, either Tatum's doctors or the Celtics doctors. If there's any doctor that looks at this situation and says that there's a chance he can make this worse, or he'll be at a higher chance of injury, I just don't think that any doctor said that in this situation. I think that was the case. Somebody would say no, that shouldn't happen. So I do think they probably got okays from doctors and all of that, and Tatum really wants to do it. So just like, it's a little bit weird to see him take this chance. But I think with where they're at and what this opportunity could be, I just think competitively it's good for basketball. And I think last night, a lot of people were going crazy watching Jason Tatum play. And like, he didn't come back looking like a superstar. But like, knowing the injuries coming off of and everything, I think in context, you can really look at the night he had last night and really be happy for him. I think last night he had, let's see here. He had 24 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists. Nope, not 24 points. Tatum had that. I just read off Jaylen Brown's stat line. That's what I get for not going straight to the box score, and I went and tried to read a headline. That's on me. I look a little stupid there, but let me go to the box score here. They played the Mavs last night. Tatum came back. He played 27 minutes, so he didn't necessarily play like a full set of minutes. He had 15 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists. He went 3 from 8 from 3. And he looked good. He didn't he had all the lift, and it felt like when I saw him jumping a few times, he was jumping off the leg that didn't have the Achilles injury. So obviously there's no way he's 100% coming back last night. But I just think the fact that the competitor he is and he's willing to do so, I think you can be very happy for Tatum. And I think we just all can hope that he comes back and he can ease his way in and he doesn't get re-injured, because I think that's the biggest worry for everybody. And as much as I am one of those guys that talked about how I don't think Tatum is at a uber super duper star, some the top 5. I'm not sure if he's the top 5 guy or anything at his best. But I think as a dude, he's a good person. He's all about his basketball. He hasn't done anything bad in the media or outside the court. He goes out there, plays basketball, is a good guy. And I think unless you're a fan of a team that doesn't want to watch the Celtics win again, because again, the Celtics have done so much winning recently, and the city of Boston has had so much prosperity. Outside of that, I think you can be very happy for a guy like Jason Tatum that has done everything right in his career. I just feel happy for him. I just hope he doesn't get injured again. I think that's the main thing. Again, I'm not a Celtics fan. I'm a Bulls fan, so I really don't have any dog in this race because the Bulls suck. But I just hope for his sake that he can be healthy. He doesn't have another injury based off of him trying to push himself back too early. But again, it is a risk that you're taking, and I think it's a risk he's willing to take, and he's doing what he can do. I don't know, man. It's a little bit of a weird one. You would like for, everybody just to not let him play this year and let him come back next year healthy and coming and starting off fresh. But again, it's just the competitors in not only the organization but himself, they just won't let it happen, man. And again, this is why they're the supreme athletes and we're just normal people, right? So there has to be something inside of him that forces him to want to take this chance, even if there may be a chance he may get hurt again. But it's just the supreme competitor just can't be stopped, man. So I do have to give him a lot of credit for taking on this chance. And again, I think last night he looked pretty good. Within context, he didn't look like a superstar last night, but knowing what he's coming back from, I just think that everybody's very happy for him. And I'm rooting for him specifically, even if I'm not rooting for the team to go out there and win a championship and all that. I do hope that Tatum go out there, get back to playing the game that he loves, and he can be healthy doing it. That's it. I think it's a very good feel-good story in basketball last night. I think if you are a general NBA fan, I think you could be happy for him. I guess, unless you're the Knicks or the Pistons, I guess, if they really think they have a chance to make it to the finals and win a championship. It's outside of them, I think in general, as an NBA fan, you could be happy for them. All right, that's the only thing really story I had to talk about other than getting to all this NFL stuff. So without further ado, let's just get into it. I have this stuff written down because I wanted to write it all down to make sure I kind of had it all and everything I wanted to say without just kind of have to peer through news stories and stuff like that. So I made sure I took the time, write all this down, kind of things I wanted to say, and I'll add my own thoughts as we go through it. But I have it in order. I don't necessarily have the days. I'm not going to try to worry about that. But I think when it started this past Monday, and then everything up until what has happened yesterday, I have all written down here. And most of the main things I kind of have written down, I'll talk about and have some thoughts on. So let's go ahead and talk about all the NFL pre-free agency moves that have happened. So let's get into it. So this started off this past Monday with kind of big news, but not really. Kansas City Chiefs release right tackle Jawan Taylor to save $20 million in cap space. I think most people, if you were kind of locked in on the league, kind of were seeing this coming, because first off, he's one of the more penalized guys in the league when it comes to illegal formations, because he's always trying to get the extra, trying to be super far back, because he's trying to deal with the defensive end he's having to deal with. So he always misaligns himself because he's trying to get that whatever he can get when it comes to alignment. So he's penalized a lot for that. And honestly, he hasn't really been all that good. The offensive line for the Chiefs was an absolute disaster last year. And he's not a guy that can move to left tackle and really rely on. He was mostly a right tackle. So And even with these I think they've tried to move the left tackle last year, it didn't work out all that well. So like again, he's getting paid a little bit too much money. They got him a couple years ago, and I think he was with the Jaguars before, and I think even then he was still very kind of like he was flagged for the same thing a lot, and people were like, okay, he's fine, but can he like take that next step and be like a really good left or right tackle? And it hasn't really worked out that way. They drafted why am I forgetting the left tackle they drafted last year? He's a Buckeye. I suck for forgetting his name. Let me see here. Chiefs left tackle. Josh Simmons. They drafted him out of Ohio State this past season, the last draft. And he played very well last season before he ended up having to leave in the middle of the season with like a family issue and stuff like that. So he had to miss a lot of the season. So in the Chiefs offensive line in general, especially once Simmons had to leave with his family thing, kind of went to trash. It was bad pretty much all season long. But again, with Simmons in there, he is a very good player. I think he kind of proved himself to be like a dog left tackle right away. So him coming back next season, healthy, ready to go from day one, it will be a huge boost. And then now they're getting rid of a guy that kind of is getting overpaid as of right now in Taylor, and saving a lot of money in the process. So I think this move makes sense money-wise, especially with what they're paying. You know, they already have one of the higher-paid quarterbacks in Mahomes. They have one of the highest-paid, one of the highest-paid defensive ends in football in why am I forgetting his name? Chris. It's Chris. Oh, why am I forgetting his name? No. Why am I forgetting his? It's Chris. It's Chris. Why? Chris Jones. They have one of the highest paid defensive linemen in Chris Jones. They have one of the highest. I think they have the highest paid guard in the NFL. I think they have one of the highest paid centers in the NFL too. Like they're paying a lot of guys top of the market money, and not to mention I think they have to kind of refresh this team a little bit to kind of gear up and have, because again I think the Patriots are trying to put themselves on the same trajectory as what the Chiefs are trying to get themselves in the same trajectory as the Patriots used to when they had Tom Brady for the 20 years that they had him, was trying to keep some of the guys be the mainstays, obviously the quarterback and then maybe a player here or there, but you constantly have to refresh your team around those couple like foundational pieces, obviously the quarterback, to kind of keep things fresh and kind of keep them going after it to where they feel like they can really go after a championship every single year and not necessarily have the lull years of having bad teams. And I think by doing that, sometimes you have to make grown-up decisions and get rid of guys that you think are very good and or can still play well while, you know, trying to save money and trying to get new, younger talent in to kind of keep your team around those players, the cornerstone players, to kind of keep it rolling. And I think Taylor, with kind of the decline in play, all the penalties, I just feel like they think they either in free agency or in the draft, they could potentially get it, or maybe they have a guy on the team they feel like they can rely on at right tackle and be able to make that transition pretty smoothly. Who knows? But again, I think saving the money that they could save was definitely a big deal for them, and I totally understand the move with what he has been as of recently. Next thing, we have the Texans trade their offensive tackle Titus Howard to the Browns in exchange for a 5th-round pick. And then the Browns, with that move, because I think Titus Howard was looking for an extension. With that move, the Browns will pay Howard a 3-year, $63 million extension. So I think he's like 30 years old. So I do think that the Texans, with all their offensive line issues last year, they decided, hey, we probably need to redo this offensive line altogether because, again, that's been their Achilles heel for years now. But again, it's funny how they do this, but yet they keep getting rid of guys on their offensive line. Titus Howard was probably like the best offensive lineman on that line that they had left because the rest of their offensive line was so trash for CJ Stroud. But they keep getting rid of guys. Again, I get it. He's a little bit older. They don't want to pay him the money he was looking for. And again, he got paid a really good amount of money from the Browns once he got traded there. But it's just like, what? Either they're going to go out, have to be very aggressive in free agency and get guys, or they're going to have to go into the draft just drafting a bunch of guys. And I don't think drafting and just drafting a whole offensive line was going to be a big, not going to be a great move for them. So maybe it's going to be a combination of both free agency and the draft in that way. But it's a little bit weird to be trading like probably your best offensive lineman that you had left starting. But I don't know. It's a weird one. But I just think they're just trying to save the money. Again, the Texans, they're going to potentially, as long as CJ does what he has to do and gets back to playing good football like he was in year one, they're going to have to pay him at some point. They're going to have to pay Will Anderson at some point, the awesome defensive end that they have, and they just paid another player, Danielle Hunter. I'll talk about that here in a bit. So I just think they have a lot of guys they're going to have to pay. So I just think that they're going to have to, obviously they're trying to make some grown-up decisions for a guy that they're not totally sold on at his age, paying him the money that he got ended up getting from the Browns. So weird move, but I guess understandable in some ways. Next one, the Texans make another move. They acquire running back David Montgomery in exchange for offensive lineman Juice Scruggs and a 2027 fourth round pick. And then this also comes paired with them releasing Joe Mixon a few days later. So this move makes a little bit more sense to me. With what they have right now, Joe Mixon he didn't play at all last year, and then the year before, he was pretty much injured all year long and wasn't able to stay healthy. So I do think with the idea that maybe Joe Mixon may not be able to get back to what he was before, on top of the fact that they were paying him a decent amount of money, maybe getting a little bit cheaper at the position, and then maybe getting a guy like David Montgomery who's a lot more healthy. And where David Montgomery has been with the Lions the last couple of years, it's not like he's been getting a bunch of carries. And a lot of people view him as like a guy that can be a number one running back anywhere else. But over the last couple of years, he's been on a team with, why am I forgetting his name? This is a bad time to be forgetting names today. Why? Nope, I'm forgetting his name. Lions running back. Jahmyr Gibbs. He's been like the 1-2 punch to the Sonic and Knuckles to a lot of people with Jahmyr Gibbs, and like they've been kind of splitting carries. So like it's not like Montgomery's been getting the full workload over the last couple of years. So, and I do think they're not really going to look for him to come and be like their number one, like getting all the carries back. I think they feel very good about the Howard, I believe, who was the running back that they just drafted, right? Oh, hold on, let me see here. Texans running back. I think Howard. No, Woody Marks. That was the guy they drafted out of USC. So I think he came up to be pretty good last year. But again, I just think they'd want to do like a 1-2 punch type of thing. And Montgomery's been doing that already. I think he's a little bit more of a power back. And not to mention he does very good at blocking. So I just think all in all, I think he's a very good veteran back for Houston that can kind of help with their running game. Montgomery is a very tough runner. He does a lot. He's much better at like a yards per carry type of back in comparison to what, the other guys on their roster can do. And when you compare him to a guy like Woody Marks, who's a little bit more of a guy catching the ball out of the backfield with a little bit more juice, can like run pretty quick. I just think it's a very good move for them. They did trade away one of their remaining offensive linemen that they've been using as of last year in Drew Scruggs. I think he's like more of like a swing guy. He can do a little bit of offensive guard, but he can swing out to tackle if you need him to. He wasn't great, but they drafted him a couple years ago. Hasn't really worked out the way they wanted it to. But again, I think this goes to show the Texans are just ready to kind of like clean sweep, redo the offensive line altogether. I don't know how that's going to work, but they're taking a swing at it, and I do think getting Montgomery with what he can do running the football, blocking as well. He can do a little bit of pass catching out of the backfield, and I just think that all in all, getting C.J. Stroud a run game with a good veteran back that still has some juice left in him, I think will be a very big deal for that Texans team to kind of get their offense back on the track after how it ended last year in the playoffs with C.J. playing such bad football. Again, he has to own that and get better as well, but I do think that getting him a running game will also be a huge help throughout the whole season. I think CJ, that running game was so bad throughout the whole season that I think that they really need to make some moves to make that better. And I think David Montgomery will definitely help with that. Next move. The Commanders released Marshawn Lattimore, a guy they traded for 2 seasons ago. He's been injury marred, hasn't played a bunch of football, and when he has played, hasn't been as effective as he was in his years with the Saints. So, with all in all, I understand with all the money he's getting paid. I just understand the Commanders getting rid of him. I think they do kind of have to reset their whole secondary, though. I think the only guy they really have left is Mike Samerstill, the guy they drafted out of Michigan. So, other than him, I think they have to start off all fresh, and they're really going to have to put some real draft capital / signing guys in free agency to help make that better, because I think the Commanders' defense was absolutely awful last year. That was like the biggest weakness of their team. So they're going to have to put some real resources into making that better. But, you know, when a guy's making as much money as Marshawn Lattimore was and not getting the production they needed, I understand them cutting him to be able to try to make room to try to get either cheaper talent or better talent out of free agency or the draft. Next move, the New York Jets place a franchise tag on Breece Hall, paying him at around $14.293 million if he signs it. It is like a non-exclusive tag that they put on him, and that means that Breece Hall does have a chance to negotiate with other teams, and if he signs in an offer sheet with another team, the Jets have 5 days to match the offer, or if they don't receive it, the team that signed Hall to that offer sheet will have to trade them 2 first-round picks in order to get him. So I understand the Jets don't have a lot of playmakers on their team in general. It looks like they're probably not going to draft a quarterback this year because there's really only one quarterback to draft early on that's really worth an early on draft pick. So maybe with the fact they don't want to pay him the money Breece Hall's probably looking for, because they're not a team that really needs that isn't a place to sign a running back, but they also don't want to lose him for nothing. I understand the idea of putting that non-exclusive tender on him, and if he gets a deal that he likes, they get 2 first-round picks out of the deal. I totally understand that, and especially with only owing him $15 million, if it does work out to where he doesn't get an offer somewhere else, it isn't a bad amount of money to pay a guy that really was your whole offense last year, because they really had nothing else offensively. I hate to say it, obviously, with Justin Fields being the quarterback there for a good portion of the year, but I think all in all, that offense was so trash. Breece Hall was the only thing that really was good about it. So I think all in all, it makes sense for everybody. I hope that Breece Hall can find a deal somewhere else, maybe getting more money, but I just think all in all, it just makes sense for the Jets to put that franchise tag on him, get a chance to either match the offer if they like the offer enough and want to keep him around. If not, getting 2 first-round picks is not a bad consolation prize for losing a guy like Breece Hall. Next one we have is the Colts put transition tag on Daniel Jones, worth about $37.83 million. That also allows Daniel Jones to negotiate with other teams, and if he signs with another team, unlike the transition, no, not transition tag, it's unlike the non-exclusive tag that Breece Hall got, if Daniel Jones finds a deal with somebody else and signs that deal and the Colts don't match it, they don't get anything in response. So they don't get any draft picks or anything if they decide not to match whatever offer sheet that Daniel Jones signs with another team. So, but they do have a few days to try to match it and all that. So they do have an opportunity to match whatever offer sheet he does get from a different team. But unlike the one put on Breece Hall, they don't get any draft picks if it doesn't work out that way. Which kind of makes sense. The Colts have been trying to sign Daniel Jones for a minute now. I do think that's their number one plan. So I do think that he's the guy they want to keep around. And honestly, with Daniel Jones healthy and playing good football, they were, what were they, 8-1, 9-1 or something like that for the first 10 weeks of the year. So they were playing great football with him at the helm, and he was playing awesome football in general along with the team and everything. So I think all in all, I think they want to keep him as their quarterback and kind of have him be their next guy for the next 5-6 years. But I just think that if some team comes up with too much money and they don't want to pay, that I think they'll have to take the opportunity to maybe potentially let him walk to a different team while because again, with where they're at as a team right now, can you think that they're a real contender for a Super Bowl in the AFC? with Daniel Jones as your quarterback, so, and like especially if he's going to be getting paid the amount of money he's going to be looking for. I don't know, man. It's different when you're paying a guy like, I think they paid Daniel Jones. How much did they pay him last year? Let me see here. Daniel Jones contract. What did he get paid last year? So this past season, they paid him $37.8 million, which, again, in the quarterback, with what quarterbacks are making, that's about $20 million less than what top-tier quarterbacks are making as of right now. So, like, it's definitely a good discount, and if they feel like around 30-something million, it's not too bad, right? But if there's a team that comes in over the top and wants to pay him upwards of 40-45 million to kind of get him to go to their team, I just think that if you're the Colts, you're going to have to make a decision as to whether you want to pay him that type of money to kind of keep him on your team, or just let him walk and go somewhere else and kind of have to go back to the well and trying to get a different quarterback to be the guy your team. But I do think the Colts are going to try everything they can to try to get him to be their guy for the next few years. But again, if a team like the Vikings comes through and like throws an offer at him that he can't refuse, I just feel like, the Colts have to make that decision as to what they want to do. So, understandable. Next one, we have the Cowboys placing a non-exclusive tag on wide receiver George Pickens. That would pay him about $27 million. That same non-exclusive tag would allow Pickens to go and try to negotiate with other teams. Same deal if he signs a tender with another team. They would then have to give them a couple first-round draft picks in order to get him. So I totally understand the Cowboys where they're at right now. They will want to keep him around because, honestly, that's all they have. All they have is their offense. They really don't have anything else defensively. Outside of Quinnen Williams, I guess they have to kind of rebuild that defense from the ground up outside of him. So I do like the idea that I don't like it because, I just don't think the Cowboys are good enough to be this aggressive and want to keep him around. I feel like they should have traded him a while ago. Or at least they should have the intention of trading him if they weren't going to be willing to pay him the money that he was going to look for in an actual long-term deal. But, the Cowboys doing what they're doing, trying to convince everybody they're actually trying to win when I don't think they're actually going to. So I understand the move. Their offense is all they have, and I think with having him on the other side of CeeDee Lamb getting passes from Dak, I feel like that is their best way to win, and I understand them trying to keep him around. But I think in general, should you, I hate to say this because I have firsthand knowledge with dealing with Pickens because I'm obviously being a Steelers fan. Do you think Pickens will be willing to play on a 1-year franchise tag? I just don't think so. And when Pickens is not all the way in and locked in on a situation, obviously he doesn't play at his best. It's very obvious when he doesn't play at his best and he kind of sells everything in the season. It's not like he's doing anything off the field, but on the field, it's very obvious when he is not all the way locked in. He's pouty. He doesn't run routes how he needs to, and it becomes a whole deal. So I just think in general, if you don't have the one to actually sign him to the money he's looking for to kind of keep him around long term, potentially keeping him on a 1-year franchise tag deal, I don't think that's going to work out all that well either. So, and I think as a Cowboys organization, if you're trying to win, paying 2 wide receivers that type of money is not going to be great, especially when you're paying CeeDee Lamb around close to $30 million. Is paying another guy 30? I think the highest guys in wide receiver wise right now are getting paid 40. And I totally understand if you're Pickens playing the way you did last year with CeeDee Lamb on the other side, saying hey, I outplayed CeeDee Lamb. I should be getting paid more money than him. So on that end, outside of the the issues when it comes to not being all the way locked in, I understand the talent that he is, saying hey, I'm better than CeeDee Lamb. I want to get paid more than him. I totally understand that idea. If you're the Cowboys, why would you want to deal with this at all? Go trade him and get something for him. Get a second-round pick because you paid a third to Pittsburgh last year to get him. That's a perfect return for a guy like that. And then this is a very deep wide receiver class. Go draft a wide receiver to play on the other side of CeeDee Lamb, and you keep that position room relatively cheap and just have one superstar paid guy. I'm not the biggest guy on CeeDee Lamb. When it comes to getting paid, you only have one superstar paid wide receiver, and then you get to have a cheap guy on the other side to potentially get. I'm not going to sit here and say that whatever wide receiver you pick is going to be the same as George Pickens in year 1, But if you can get 75% of that production on the other side and like have a better locker room in general for it, I don't get why you wouldn't want to do that. But I don't know. It's the Cowboys for you. They're always a team that kind of wants to keep their names in the news, even if it's not for making great decisions. Next move, you have the Falcons placing a non-exclusive tag on tight end Kyle Pitts, which would pay him around $15 million. Again, same deal as the other non-exclusive tags. He can go, try to get a deal with somebody else. If they do, they can get some draft picks for him, so which would make a lot of sense. Again, Kyle Pitts, I think his first 2 years in the NFL hadn't really been unlocked when it comes to how he was as a player and what he could be. And then last year, he kind of takes a huge jump, is playing a lot better. And I think they kind of figured some things out as to how to use him to kind of best effectively use him and kind of get the best out of him. So I get the idea of wanting to keep him around for another year. And if he signs somewhere else, get a couple picks for him. If not, have another year to trying to see if that jump was something that's going to stay, or if he's going to kind of fall off the cliff again. You can kind of let him walk after next year. So I totally understand them placing that tag on him because, again, he's so talented, man. I just think a player like that, I just don't think you let him walk for free if you have him in-house. So totally understand, Kyle, especially with the way he played last year. I understand. Next one, the Bengals will allow Trey Hendrickson to become a free agent, defensive end, obviously. They don't place any franchise tags on him, especially with how bad it went last year. I totally understand. I'm actually quite happy for Hendrickson that he'll finally have a chance to be a free agent and go out there and get paid from somebody a decent amount of money and kind of get to the next chapter of his career, because obviously this whole thing with the Bengals has been a disaster for years now. And I'm very happy for him that he has an opportunity to go out there and get paid what he's worth from some other team, whatever this team decides to do so. The Bengals for a while has been doing this dance, and I feel like they should have done this shit a long time ago and traded him and got picks for him rather than doing this whole back and forth. But they haven't. They've been very... I don't think Jace would necessarily disagree with this. They have not been a big boy organization making really like smart moves as a team. And Jace has been on this for a while. Hey, if we're not going to pay him, why not trade him, get something for him, and go try to draft the next Trey Hendrickson? And I just feel like in general, if that was how this is going to go and you're going to let him walk for free anyway, you had opportunities to trade him to get something for him. But I don't know why, man. The Bengals' decision making is like kind of iffy, like all the time. But I'm glad that all in all, Trey Hendrickson gets to get out free and go out there and try to take the next step in his career and get paid for it. I'm very happy for him. Next one, Seattle Seahawks are going to allow Kenneth Walker to become a free agent. Not going to put the franchise tag on him. I think the Seahawks, being a good organization, even with the fact that he was the Super Bowl MVP, he played very well. I just think that with what he was going to want to get paid in general, I think the Seahawks were not very excited about that because, as well as Kenneth Walker played in that Super Bowl game, like, do you think he's a top 5 running back in the sport? I don't think so. And I think he's going to want to get paid like that. And I think the Seahawks looked at the situation and said, hey, I don't think this is going to work out. Let's just go ahead and let you walk and try to go get whatever deal you can get somewhere else. And I totally understand that because Kenneth Walker, as good as he is, I just don't think he is a top 5 consistent guy. I think talent-wise, he probably is. But when it comes to what he has been on the field, especially with the injury history he's had in the NFL so far, I just think that I totally understand the idea that with what he's going to try to get paid and with what Seattle's going to have to pay, because I think they're going to have to pay JSN in the next year or so. They're going to have to pay Nick Emanwari in the next year or so. So, like, they have some real dudes they're going to have to pay some big money to, and I think paying a running back the money that he'd be looking for is not going to be the way to build out their team the way they want to. So, not to mention, they're going to have to sign Sam Darnold to a real extension at some point in the next couple of years, since it looks like he's going to be their guy for years to come, especially with him being as young as he is. I think he's only like 27, 28 years old. So, the Seahawks, being a good organization that knows how to run it, have an idea that they don't want to keep the expensive running back, let him walk without it being a real issue. I totally understand that. Next one, the Cardinals announced a plan to cut Kyler Murray at the start of the league year, obviously being Wednesday, and then allowing him to go ahead and sign with whatever team that he wants because on a vet minimum, because I think because they still owed him a bunch of money. I think he's getting paid like $40-something million from the Cardinals this next season. It'll allow Kyler Murray to go to whatever team that he wants in time for the vet minimum and still get paid a bunch of money, mostly from the Cardinals. It allows Kyler Murray to go take a next step in his career somewhere else. And there are teams that have been like kind of linked to him, kind of like either be Miami or the Vikings, or what is another team that was looking at him? I forget the other teams. Because the Raiders are getting a quarterback. Maybe the Falcons, if they're not too attached to. Why am I forgetting the guy's name? Oh no! See, today is not the podcast to be forgetting names, guys. It really isn't. Falcons QB. Why am I forgetting his name? Michael Penix Jr. So if they're not feeling all that great about Michael Penix Jr., that's another option for him as well, especially with those. I think the two main ones that I think are the best options for a guy like Kyler Murray, with teams that have talent around him and he can kind of play in like really good offenses, is the Falcons and the Vikings, right? If you go to the Vikings, getting paid at that minimum, they wouldn't have to pay him right away, and then they can kind of take a season, see if he's going to be their long-term answer, and then pay him next year. So he can go into that offense, have two very good wide receivers right off the bat, with Justin Jefferson being one of the top two wide receivers in the NFL, depending on who you are making that list. So you'll instantly have one of the top wide receivers in the NFL. You'll have, on the other side, you'll have, why am I forgetting his name? Let's see. I'm forgetting a bunch of names today. Vikings, wide receivers. Jordan Addison. Sorry. You have Jordan Addison on the other side. You have the Nope, not Hawkinson. Vikings. Was it? Or maybe it is Hawkinson. Nope, it's not Hawkinson. Yeah, it is Hawkinson. TJ Hawkinson. So you have one of the top tight ends in the NFL when it comes to pass catching. So you're going to have a good offense around you. Offensive line needs a little bit of work, but I think they've been getting better. So that is a good spot. Not to mention the fact that even if you're playing in the cold, you do get a home. You're in a dome stadium for all your home games, so that's going to be a help. But you are going to have to go deal with the Bears in crazy weather potentially, and also Green Bay as well. But again, with going to have to play the Lions a couple times a year, you're going to have to play in a dome there. And then with your own home team being a dome, I feel like is a good spot, especially offensively, having a team around you. I feel like that's definitely a good option. And then the other one being the Falcons, who obviously know about all the talent that they have on that team. Bijan Robinson at running back, Kyle Pitts at tight end. They have, oh man, I am awful. Drake London at wide receiver. Like, they have a bunch of weapons on that team. Their offensive line isn't necessarily all that bad. I think they have a good team overall. I think the Falcons are a team that, if you add a guy like Kyler Murray and everything works out and their offense kind of takes a jump with a guy like that at quarterback, I think they can be a real team with him at the helm, and I feel like will allow Kyler Murray to kind of like go into a very talented situation. He has guys to throw to. And they have a decent defense as well. I think their defense started playing very well, even though they're going to probably be losing one of their great pass rushers because of his own issues off the field. I feel like those are two very good options for Kyler Murray to where he can go, play for the vet minimum for a year for some team, figure it out if he's going to be the long-term answer there, get paid a nice long deal, a nice long contract once that happens. But if not, have a chance to go somewhere else and get your money elsewhere. But I do think those are two very good options that I think are the most talked about for being options for Kyler Murray. But here's what I'll say, right? Even though those two options are the best options for Kyler, I do believe that I think people like this started up a conversation about him as to whether he can be a guy to like be the next Sam Darnold. Like, hey, it doesn't work out your first place, and then you go to a new place, maybe taking a chill pill when it comes to being a little bit more humble with what you are, and knowing the player that you are, taking a next step and being a little bit more mature, not only as a person but as a player. And kind of being better for it, and taking whatever team he goes to next, and like taking that next step and being a very much better player. I think that is an option. I think Kyler Murray at his best was a top 10, top 15 quarterback, and I think talent-wise he's a lot better than that. But I feel like it is like one of those things where you like have to worry about like, hey, he still is a small quarterback. He still has issues seeing over the line of scrimmage, and he has like the offense definitely takes a big change with what he is, depending on like in comparison to getting a tall, big quarterback that can see all over the football field. So I do think Kyler Murray does have his deficiencies as a quarterback, but I do think what he does bring to the table, rocket arm, can pass. He's like a very good passer. He can run away from practically anybody. He's a very like an RC car on the field. I've been talking about him like that for years. And I do think that obviously some of that athleticism will wane over time, but I don't think that's really going to happen as of yet. And I feel like he still has a few more years of being able to do that before it starts really taking a step down. Not to mention he doesn't take a lot of hits. Like he makes sure that he runs away from pressure, gets out of bounds. I think he does take really good care of himself to not take a bunch of big hits out there. So I think that if he can go to one of those two teams and have a really good year, I think he can really turn a team into, I think Kyler Murray can still be a top 10-ish quarterback. I really do think so. I really do. So, and again, people that don't think so, I'm just like, hey, I'm like, again, totally understand his deficiencies as a player, but if he can be put in a good offense that can plan around that and like really help him like accentuate his strengths rather than his weaknesses, I think that they can do some really good things with him as their quarterback with one of those two teams. And let me say this one thing before I go on to the next thing. I have to mention Pittsburgh, man, because I'm like, as much as like I'm not very excited about the idea of getting Aaron Rodgers back for his age 43 season. I'm just saying, what if the Steelers kick the tires and maybe can get Kyler Murray on a cheap deal for next year and like see if he can be their guy? Again, I don't think it really works out. But again, even with Kyler Murray not, being built to play in cold weather and all of that, I'm just like, hey, even Kyler Murray not being at his all the way best, he's much better than what Aaron Rodgers is. I'm just saying it's an option. I'm sitting here. I don't want to go through another offseason waiting on Aaron Rodgers to decide if he's the quarterback or not. Not to mention, he's 43 fucking years old. Why are we putting our whole organization in the hands of a 43-year-old quarterback? I don't understand. He was fine last year. He was. But I'm just like, come on, dude. I don't... A 43-year-old quarterback, guys, like, the Steelers should not be in a situation where we're relying on a 43-year-old. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know. But Kyler would be a great option for Pittsburgh. I just don't think Kyler would never pick Pittsburgh. I really don't think so. But I'm just like, the Steelers should not just be all gung-ho on Aaron Rodgers being their quarterback. They just should not be. That should not be the option. I just don't understand. Sorry. Let me get off my soapbox. Next thing, Eagles. It's been a big question this past week whether the Eagles are going to trade A.J. Brown or not. And apparently the news came out that they are going to be looking for a Quinnen Williams type deal in order to trade A.J. Brown. And that Quinnen Williams deal, the one that the Cowboys had to do to get him last year from the Jets, that deal was a first-round pick and a second-round pick. I don't know. Is he worth it? I think so. I think to a team like, maybe the Patriots or like what other team do I know of definitely needs wide receivers right away? I can't think of them right now. I'm not going to try to go down that rabbit hole. But I do think that A.J. Brown's probably worth that, and I feel like as long as he can go to a team with better, more consistent quarterback play. Again, Jalen Hurts is great. I think he's a good quarterback, but I just don't think he's a consistent quarterback. And I feel like with all the offensive issue, I just think in general, I think it's better for everybody if they probably just let A.J. Brown walk. Especially with the money he's getting paid and with where they are as a team, man, I just feel like I just don't think that the offense is going to get a lot better and change the way that this has been rolling the last couple of years ever since their Super Bowl. Not last couple of years. They won the Super Bowl last year, right? Yes. Not this past season, but the season before. So, like, this past season, the offense has been awful and it's been terrible, right? I just don't think the offense is going to take a huge jump and turn around and like make things a lot better with that whole A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, and Devontae Smith. I just don't think the offense is going to get a ton better with whatever new guy they have at the helm. So I just think in general, I feel like you just make this a lot better if you just trade A.J. Brown, let him go somewhere else and maybe be the number one guy somewhere else and be in a better offense. And then maybe the Eagles can kind of rebuild things from there and not necessarily have all that animosity going throughout the locker room. Like, again, I'm not going to blame AJ Brown for all of it. I really don't think so. I feel like a lot of this is because the Eagles were so willing to just sweep all the problems under the rug and act like everything's fine when it wasn't. I feel like they kind of gaslighted him for years into saying like, hey, this isn't an issue and all that, and he was the only one willing to come out and talk about the real issue being the offense and Jalen Hurts in general. I feel like those two problems were there. And I feel like they gaslighted him into saying that he was the problem when he really wasn't. And then when he is right about it, he's not going to be a guy that's going to do it necessarily the most high roady of ways and like just eat it. He's going to be a guy that's going to make things a little bit worse and kind of, be a little bit more of a diva about it. And I'm not going to totally blame him for that either. I just think there's a lot of blame to go around. I feel like this is a lot better for everybody if they just kind of turn the page on this whole situation. But again, who knows if they're going to get the deal that they're looking for in order to trade him. So they could just run it right back next year and be doing the exact same shit all over again like they did last year. So who knows? All right, this one's a blockbuster right here. This one kind of happened a few days ago. Kansas City Chiefs trade cornerback Trent McDuffie to the Rams for their 2026 first round pick. This was because the Rams had 2 first round picks this upcoming draft. I think they had the Falcons pick at like pick 13 or 16. And then they have their own pick at pick 29. And that's the pick that that the Rams traded to the Chiefs in order to get him, as well as a 5th and a 6th this year, and then a 2027 third round pick. So the Chiefs looking at how they need to build their team out for the next few years. Trent McDuffie is a guy that's, I think, still in his rookie deal and wants to get paid a lot of money. And I think he wants to get paid like at the high end of the cornerback market, which is like upwards of $30 million. So I feel like the way they looked at it, they're like, hey, we need to rebuild our team, and like having one of the highest paid corners in the NFL on top of all the other guys we have paid a bunch of money doesn't make sense. And not to mention, I think the one position that the Chiefs have done very good at, like drafting and like producing good guys, is at cornerback. So I think in general the Chiefs realize like, hey, we don't necessarily have the money in our pocket to pay McDuffie the money that he's looking for, on top of the fact that maybe we feel like we can go draft a guy or get a guy in free agency and kind of build up that way. So I just think all in all it makes sense, not to mention with what the haul they got for him, it makes total sense for them, right? They get a bunch of draft picks to kind of go out there and use for other guys to kind of build out their team for years to come with Patrick Mahomes at the helm. And then for the Rams, this deal makes total sense because guess what? The Rams, with what they were last year, being I think they were a top 2 team in the NFL last year. I think it was the Seahawks, and I think it was the Rams right after them. And I think the biggest weakness on that Rams team was their secondary on the defensive side of the football. And I feel like adding a guy like Trent McDuffie that can play outside corner, inside corner, I think he's probably a lot better of a slot corner than he is a outside guy. But again, when they have to face a guy like JSN twice a year, having one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL that can play both spots is definitely a huge deal. And the fact that they already have it's not like the Rams are paying a bunch of dudes top of market money. They are paying Matthew Stafford a bunch of money, but outside of that, they're not paying a bunch of money to a bunch of players. And with the fact that the Rams are one of those teams that aren't necessarily all that attached to using all their draft picks, and not to mention they had 2 of them, so they still have the 13th pick. I believe this 13th pick. Let me see. Well, I got to check it. Rams picks. So they still have, only this pick 13 that they got from Atlanta. So they still have the 13th pick overall to add to their team and kind of make themselves better. And then you get to use that other first round pick they had to go get one of the top corners in the NFL. Is a big deal for them. And then obviously paying him the money that he's going to be looking for is not necessarily going to be all that hurtful to their pocketbooks because they just don't have a very expensive team right now. Because like a lot of their team is very young. Their defense is one of the younger defenses in the NFL, and they played very well outside of their secondary last year. And then offensively, they haven't really paid Puka Nacua. They're paying Devontae Adams a decent amount of money, but it's not like top of the market wide receiver money. And they still have they're not paying a bunch of money to a lot of guys. So like getting a guy like this, to help out one of their biggest weakness that they had last year. And not to mention, the Rams are one of those teams that I think with what they have at Matthew Stafford, with him already saying that he's going to be coming back next year and playing another season, the Rams should be the team that's like looking to attack for the next year or two as like, hey, these are the last couple years of Matthew Stafford playing at the height of his at the top of his game. Like, we should be going after it every year. And I feel like getting a guy like McDuffie is a big deal for them to kind of help quell. I think they're going to have to get they're probably going to have to draft some other guys to help that secondary as well. But having it all be kind of like built around Trent McDuffie, one of the best corners in the NFL, is definitely a huge deal. Next one, Cowboys restructured Dak Prescott and their guard Tyler Smith's contracts, creating $47 million in cap space. Again, kind of par for the course. If the quarterback, and if you have players that have high high cap hits, usually you can just restructure their contracts, turn their money into signing bonus money, and then it kind of lessens the amount of what it counts towards your cap. You're going to have to pay that tax at some point to where it'll have to come off your books at some point and have to count. But the Cowboys are playing games. They're going to try to create some more money in cap space in order to try to get other players to help their team. But my whole thing is like, the Cowboys are like a whole fucking defense away, man. They're a whole defense. They're not just one or two players away. They're a whole defense away. And I'm just like, I just don't know how the Cowboys are really going to build themselves up into being a team that can like be a contender next year. I just don't think that's going to happen. And I just think that, again, they have an aging owner that wants to try to win a Super Bowl, but again, I just don't think he's ever going to want to do it in a way that actually is effective. He wants to do it his way, and I just don't think that's ever going to work. But again, they're trying. I guess they're trying. And I just don't know how this move is going to help them at all, especially if they're not going to be making great moves because of all this cap space they're making. I don't know, man, but it is they're trying to do so. They're trying, but not in the most effective of ways. Next move, the Patriots announced that they are going to they are planning to release Stephon Diggs at the start of the league year. This one's a little bit of a head scratcher to me. I feel like Stephon Diggs came in and played very well for the Patriots last year. I think he turned out to be I think he had over 1,000 yards. He played very well. He wasn't a problem on the football field. Off the field, he had a little bit of issues, like a few issues here or there, lawsuits and all of that. But on the football field, I think he played very well for them. I think all in all, and he wasn't getting paid a bunch of money either. And I just think that all in all, I feel like all the off the field issues is probably what really pushed the Patriots to make this decision. On top of the fact that maybe because they have all the cap space they have, and I think they've proved that Drake May is one of the best quarterback, probably a top 5, top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I think they think they're going to be able to be an attractive destination for other free agent wide receivers on top of whatever they do in the draft. So I just think all in all, I feel like they think they have a better chance of going to get other talented guys to make up for not having Stephon Diggs, and maybe not have to deal with all the off the field issues that Stephon does bring with him. Even though I think on the field, I think he did very well last year. He played very good football. I feel like he was a very good leader. I think every time that why am I forgetting the coach's name? Mike Vrabel talked about him. I think he talked about how good of a leader he was, how he was an example for everybody on that team. I think he was one of the veteran players on that team, led with a lot of youth. And I feel like on the field, Diggs did everything he had to do, but I think off the field kind of like is what led to them making the decision that they made to kind of let him go. On top of the fact, I feel like they should have confidence that they can get other guys to want to come play with Drake May because of how good he played last year. Next one, Steelers. Finally, my team made a move pre-free agency. They announced that they're going to be releasing Jonnu Smith to save $7 million in cap space. Again, it's not a bunch of savings they're going to be making because they're getting rid of him, but I do think that pecking order-wise, I feel like is a big deal. Here's what I'll say, right? I was one of the guys when they made the trade that I thought it was going to be a good move. But I believe that because I knew that the Steelers were not going to be able to get a legit wide receiver too. And I felt like if they were going to be gung-ho with Aaron Rodgers being the guy, not wanting to suck for this year, getting another tight end that was like very dynamic in not only with the Falcons, But with the Dolphins, getting a guy like that could be very dynamic, and all of that was going to be a huge help. But I think because of that, guys like Pat Freiermuth and Washington, the other tight end that they drafted a couple years ago, kind of had to take a step back when it comes to snaps and all of that. And not to mention, those other two guys were more effective than Jonnu Smith when they were all on the field. So I think in general, getting rid of one of those guys kind of lets Freiermuth and Washington get a lot more snaps that way. Not to mention, I think they're better players right now, more effective players than what Jonnu Smith proved on the Pittsburgh Steelers last year. So I just think all in all, it's a good move for everybody, and getting that money off the books would definitely be a huge help for the Steelers. For whatever reason, trying to feel like they can build the team up to be a contender when I just don't think that's a possibility. But, it is what it is on that. What else we got here? Next move. Oh, this is another blockbuster. Oh, let me take a drink here before I get into it. Let's see here. Next one. The Bears trade wide receiver DJ Moore to the Buffalo Bills, and this is what the trade came out to be. So DJ Moore and a 5th round pick will be going to the Bills in exchange for the Bills' 2026 2nd round pick. For the Bears, I think DJ Moore kind of fell off to be the 3rd receiver on their offense last year. I think last year he had 700 yards of receiving. And I think he had how many? I think he had 5 touchdowns, something like that. Let me see. DJ Moore stats. Last year he had 50 catches, 682 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So, and that was in comparison to the year before, where he had 900 yards, 98 catches, 900 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So, in the year before that with the Bears, where he had 96 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 58 and 8 touchdowns. Sorry, I keep messing up the stats there. So, for the past 3 years, it has been a steady decline, and then last year especially with Johnson leading the offense and being their head coach. Not to mention with them drafting a few wide receivers, they have let's see here. Let me make sure. They have Roman Dunze as the wide receiver guy that they drafted 2 years ago. They had Roman Dunze, who they recently drafted, as a top wide receiver for them. And then they also had, who was the other? I forget. Luther Burden as well, who they just drafted this past draft, and I think he came out and played a really good football for them as well. So I feel like getting a guy like DJ Moore off the team, save a little bit of money. Not to mention because you have a couple young wide receivers already that you already have on your team. DJ Moore is the number 3 guy on your team already this past season. Get a 2nd round pick for him. I feel like it's a big deal. I feel like if for the Bears, it makes total sense because he's a number 3 guy. And I feel like DJ Moore should feel like he can still be a number 1 in the right offense. And I feel like that makes total sense for the Bears to make that move. And on the Bills side, I feel like it makes total sense. One of the Bills' biggest weaknesses is that they didn't have a pass catcher that Josh Allen can rely on and just throw the football to him and go out there and make a play. And I feel like DJ Moore now going to play with, why am I forgetting the coach's name? Joe Brady, who was the offensive coordinator with Carolina when DJ Moore was there. So it is an offense that DJ Moore will be very what's the word I'm looking for? He'll be very familiar with. Not to mention he'll be playing with a great quarterback in Josh Allen. And not to mention he'll go in and be inserted as the number 1 guy right away. And he can just go be a playmaker and have a better chance to get back to being the dynamic DJ Moore that we all have known him to be over his NFL career. Not to mention he's still a fairly young guy. So I just feel like it's a very good move for both sides. The Bills get a wide receiver number 1 that they've been looking for that can be very dynamic and be their guy for the next few years. And the Bears get rid of a guy that kind of fell off to be their number 3 guy that was getting paid a decent amount of money So I just feel like all in all, it just makes sense for everybody. And I do think that if Josh Allen and DJ Morgan kind of put things together, I do feel like he can be a huge addition to that offense to help them get back to where they need to be offensively to help out Josh Allen and kind of like get them to the next phase of, maybe getting to the AFC Championship, maybe getting to an AFC Championship game. And that's all I got on that one. So next move we have is the Texans re-sign defensive end Danielle Hunter to a 1-year, $40.1 million extension with $30 million being a signing bonus. So makes sense for them. Texans had a top 2 defense in the NFL last year. I would say number 1, but a lot of people would say number 2. They're led by their guy Will Anderson being the young defensive end. Danielle Hunter being on the other side makes it for a dynamic duo. And not to mention the Texans, they were a couple good CJ Stroud games away from like potentially making a Super Bowl and like being that team and like taking that next step. So I get the idea of keeping a guy like Danielle Hunter around for another year, paying him a 1-year deal, not going to be long-term, guaranteeing him a lot of money. But again, for a 1-year type of thing, he gets the money he's looking for, and they get another year's worth of great production out of him. Because I feel like ever since they got him, not last year, but the year before, he has been very good for them. So it makes total sense for both sides. I feel like that keeps their defense. Because again, I don't think the defense has a lot of needs at all. So I just feel like if they keep that defense together for another year and they kind of help retool the offense with CJ getting a little bit better on his own, I feel like they can come back and be one of the bigger, contenders in the AFC. Next move, the Raiders will release Geno Smith after 1 year. They signed him last year. It's like a 3-year deal, paying him like $30-something million a year. Things did not work out at all last year. Geno Smith played like ass. I was one of the guys that was a Geno Smith apologist before last year. And then this past season, he played terribly. There's really nothing for me to cape up and for him for. Like, he played awfully last year. There's really nothing you can say. And not to mention with the Raiders having the number 1 overall pick, they're going to draft Fernando Mendoza without a doubt. And I feel like this move just clears the way for Fernando to start to be their quarterback 1 literally right away, kind of help build their team out. And hopefully Fernando can be their guy for the next 10 to 15 years. So all in all, the move makes sense. And Geno, I'm not sure. Again, I thought Geno was ass last year. I really do. But if you had to say who you think could be a better quarterback coming into next year, 43-year-old Aaron Rodgers or Geno Smith, I don't think that's an easy answer. And as much as I think Geno Smith would probably cost a little bit more money, but I do think that Geno Smith could probably do a little bit more right now as a quarterback. He throws a lot of picks, but he's played with DK Metcalf before, and they've done some really good things. I'm just saying he's another option. The Steelers aren't going to take it, I don't think, but it's another option. Next one we have Lions will release left tackle Taylor Decker after contract negotiations break down. So apparently Taylor Decker has been a 10-year player. I think he's the most tenured player on that team. He's been there 10 years. Apparently they were looking to try to do a whole new deal with him. Things did not work out. Taylor Decker was not necessarily a fan of it. I feel like he's a little more heartbroken about the situation because I felt like, at least from what the letter that he wrote to the fans and all that, thanking them and all that, Taylor Decker felt like he was a cornerstone of that team. He felt like he was going to have a pretty easy time getting new money from them. It didn't work out that way. He's a little bit brokenhearted, but he said, hey, since you're not going to pay me what I think I'm worth, can you just let me go and let me be a free agent so I can go sign somewhere else and get some good money? And the Lions, to their credit, they acquiesce. They're going to let him go. They're going to let him be a free agent and go sign with a different team for the money that he's looking for. I think this is good on everybody. I think the Lions, with where they are at this year now, with trying to make their team better while also paying a lot of people a lot of good money, I totally understand the Lions not necessarily being all gung-ho about paying Taylor Decker the money he's looking for. But again, he played very well last year too. He's still one of the better tackles in the NFL. But I do understand the Lions trying to save money somewhere, and I think this is the spot where they can. And I just think that even though the Lions' offensive line did take a step back last year, it really did. And they weren't really blocking as well as they had in years past. And I don't know if letting your your left tackle walk is going to be the best thing for your offensive line. But again, I get it. You're going to have to make big boy decisions at some point, and I feel like your offensive tackle looking for money is like one of those spots. Because again, offensive tackles, man, they make a bunch of money when they're like at the top of their game. I think Taylor Decker is one of those guys that still can demand a really good amount of money, and I do understand the Lions not necessarily being gung-ho about paying him all the money he's looking for, but it's just like, one of those is like, hey, Decker's been one of your guys, man. He's been there. He's been through all the shit that you've been as an organization up until now, these last few years, where you've kind of gotten your shit together. But it's just, it's kind of how business goes sometimes, Next one we have, I think we have a few more, like 4 more things left to talk about before we get out of here. Next one, the Packers. Okay, so this is like one of those weird ones, right? Because it came out as news that the Packers were getting ready to release defensive end Rashawn Gary from their team. And then Rashawn Gary posts a goodbye letter to the fans of Green Bay on his Instagram. That post gets quickly deleted. And then the news comes out after that he actually hasn't been released yet, and that the Packers are still open to a bunch of options, including trading him, signing him, or just letting him walk altogether, because releasing him is still an option for them up until the league year starts on Wednesday. So I'm not sure what's going on here. Maybe the Packers are like, hey, maybe there's still a chance they can trade him and get something for him. But I don't know, man. I feel like this is a weird move, because when they traded for Micah Parsons, it was to be able to get a closer type of pass rusher, and then be able to have Rashawn Gary be your number 2 guy. And I feel like Rashawn Gary is your number 2 defensive end is like a huge deal, and it makes your defensive line very good. But I don't know. Maybe maybe the money he's getting paid, maybe they're not very comfortable with it. And on top of the money they're already paying Micah Parsons, I don't know. But I feel like when you made the move to get Micah, it was because you can make Rashawn Gary your number 2 and make your defensive line like a defensive line that can get after the quarterback and really cause some trouble. And not to mention the fact that Micah Parsons has had the ACL injury last year, so he might not even play this season. At least he won't play most of the season. And I feel like having Rashawn Gary would still be a good guy to kind of have on your team. But who knows, man? This one's a weird one. The fact that it kind of came out that he was getting released and then not, and then it's like a whole thing. Who knows how it's going to work out? But definitely a weird one. I feel like they should probably keep him. I don't know. That's a weird move all around. Bears trade for center Garrett Bradbury from the Patriots for a 2027 fifth-round pick to replace their center, Drew Dahlman, who retired. So Drew Dahlman, early on this past week, he announced retirement. He's like 27 years old, and he just came off a Pro Bowl year. He had played so well for the Bears, and then he surprised retirement. Nobody saw it coming. Everybody was super surprised by it, and like, good for him. He's made enough money in his NFL career. Maybe injuries have gotten a little bit too wild for him, and he's like, hey, it's time for me to get out, go experience life outside of football, and be relatively healthy and do so. And I'm like, for him, that is a great decision. But for the Bears, that came out of nowhere, and especially with their offensive line last year finally taking a step up, where you thought like their offensive tackles weren't good last year, but their interior offensive line actually did take a step up, and they played very well. But now you're looking to replace your offensive tackles, and now you have to replace your center too that just retired. Is definitely a little bit of a weird situation. But when you go and trade for Bradbury from the Patriots for, a fifth-round pick to try to help, shore up that spot, I totally understand them doing so. On top of the fact that, they still have to go replace the tackles. So I just feel like at least filling in one of those spots would definitely be a huge help for that team. Who knows what they're going to do on the offensive tackle side, whether they're going to go pay somebody in free agency or try to go draft somebody. Who knows? But, when you have 3 spots that are going to have to get filled somehow, trading a guy for a fifth-round pick, a pick that usually doesn't really, like, fifth-round picks aren't necessarily, like, guaranteed to be starting guys in the draft anyway, and you can get a guy that you can, like, expect to be your starter for in the next few years, it's definitely a good trade. And I don't think Bradbury is going to be like a Pro Bowl guy like Dahlman just was for them. But I do feel like getting a guy, the center doesn't necessarily have to be your best lineman. It just has to be the guy that can kind of lead the offensive line into being on the same page. So as long as Bradbury can do that, I do think as long as they get the tackles right, I do feel like they can come out of this, not necessarily winning and like being on the top, but I think they can get out of this without their offensive line being much worse than what it was last year. Maybe, possibility. Let's see, the next one to talk about, last one and the biggest one. I'm not going to lie to you here. This is the one that killed me yesterday because this is like one of those big ones that is going to impact me and Jace as well. The Ravens make a blockbuster trade to acquire defensive end Max Crosby for 2 first-round picks, one this year and one next year. And this isn't one of those moves where you have to trade for a premier pass rusher and pay him because he's already been paid. I think he just got paid last year. So, like, that's not necessarily an issue. And the whole Max Crosby situation for the Raiders had been a little bit of an iffy one the last few years because it's like every year it's like, hey, the Raiders suck. Will they trade Max Crosby? And all of this stuff happening. And now they're going to be starting off with a brand new quarterback going into next year. And everybody was looking for, hey, are they going to trade Max Crosby now that they kind of have to hit the reset button now with a new quarterback and everything? Because Max Crosby, as much as he's getting paid, does he want to go try to go play winning football in a different situation? And Max Crosby over the years has been like, hey, I love it at Vegas. I love playing here. I love playing for the Raiders. And I feel like he's been very adamant about that. But last year, he was healthy enough to play, and they kind of like held him out because I think they were just trying to they were going to be like looking to trade him at some point this offseason. And like things kind of soured between him and the Raiders. And it kind of opened up the opportunity for him to be willing to go and be traded somewhere else and go play for a different team. And I think the news as of recently, last couple of days, had been between the Cowboys and the Ravens were the two teams that were looking to try to trade for him. And I think the Bears were in on it too, trying to get a trade done. And the Ravens kind of came up over the top and like said, hey, we'll give you the 2 first-round picks that you're looking for. And the Raiders said, yeah. Because I think that the Cowboys were trying to get him, but they were not willing to give 2 first-round picks. They were trying to give a first and a second. And I think the Bears were also similar. They were only willing to give like a first and a second. So the Ravens really did come in over the top and like were willing to give the 2 first-round picks up in order to get him. Which, again, I totally understand from the Ravens' point of view because you have Lamar Jackson playing at a very good level. You have your offense is, I'm not going to say your offense is set, but your offense is always going to be relatively good with as long as you have Lamar Jackson playing in his prime. You have Derrick Henry still playing very good football even in his early 30s, which is awesome to see Derrick Henry do so. He's still a very good player. Do they have to get a couple wide receivers or so? Probably. So they have a few pieces they have to get around their offense, but their defense was definitely more of the issue last year for that team. And getting a guy like Max Crosby on that team to kind of like be your star pass rusher will help quell a lot of the issues that you have. I do think they still have other issues to have to fix on that defense, but I think it is a very good start to have a premier pass rusher that every team that you have to play has to worry about. And then I feel like you can kind of fill in spots everywhere else to help that defense out. And not to mention they have Jesse Minter as their head coach, who is a good defensive mind, great defensive mind that can put together a defense. And then having a defensive guru like Minter, now having a strong premier pass rusher in Max Crosby, and then you have why am I forgetting his name on the back end? Kyle Hamilton. You have Kyle Hamilton on the back end at safety, kind of like being your superstar safety. So like that is a good building blocks for trying to build out that defense along with getting other pieces to help build around them. So I feel like it's a big move for the Baltimore Ravens. I do feel like this shows they're really going to be going after it. You still have Lamar and here's the funny thing, right? Early on yesterday on Twitter, Lamar Jackson came on and like posted the boom gif. Like, it's the classic, like, hey, something's going to happen. It's a big thing for me because Ohio State football and all that. Whenever something happens and they get a recruit and all that, usually boom is the gif that comes out. And that's usually a big move's coming, right? So Lamar comes out early on yesterday and does the boom gif. And everybody's like, what's going to happen? Are they trading for A.J. Brown and this, that, and the other? What move is the Ravens going to make? And people were on alert for it all day long yesterday. And then late last night, the news comes out that it happened. And now I'm sitting here like, as a Steelers fan, I'm like, we're fucked. We're already not as good as the Patriots are on a year in, year out basis. And now the Ravens, their defense was the one thing that I could look at and be like, hey, that defense can be had because they don't necessarily have premier pass rushers, and their secondary was definitely taking a step back last year. And now I'm going to have to worry about my potentially 43-year-old quarterback and Aaron Rodgers running away from fucking Max Crosby. I don't feel really good about that. On top of the other guys we have to face throughout the AFC North. And I was looking on Twitter on X last night, and I saw this picture of it's a little bit crass, but it's of Joe Burrow in some white underwear on a white couch, kind of like, a casting couch type of situation. And then he has Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, and Max Crosby all up above him, kind of like, insinuating a casting couch situation, if you know what I'm talking about, where I'm like, hey, he's going to have to deal with these 3 premier pass rushers for 6 games during his NFL season. That's kind of insane that you have to deal with those type of pass rushers for 6 out of your 17 NFL games next year, because all 3 of those guys play in your own division. And not to mention the offensive line for the Bengals already sucks, and now you have to go face the Ravens too and deal with a guy like Max Crosby. Definitely not a good deal. Not to mention, again, it's not just about Joe Burrow. Whatever quarterback plays for my team, we don't have an offensive line that can handle a Max Crosby. It just doesn't work out that way. So I feel like this is a move that says the Ravens are still going after it, and they're going to be very aggressive next year and kind of like, get back to being at the top of the NFC, top of the AFC, like they've been in years past. So I think all in all, they get to pay a lot for it. 2 first-round picks is definitely very aggressive. But here's the thing. When you're the Ravens and when you're playing at the top of your game anyway, you're picking anywhere from 25 to 32 anyway. So I guess 32 only if you win a Super Bowl. So like 25 to 30. If you're picking at those spots anyway, and you can trade those picks for a guy like Max Crosby, who's already proven to be a top defensive end in the NFL, it makes sense, man, especially with what the issues they've had on defense last year, and you can kind of get a guy like that to come in and make a huge difference for you. I feel like it's a big deal for the Ravens, and I think honestly puts them right back on top of the AFC North. Again, everybody thought they're going to be at the top of the AFC North anyway, even without Max Crosby. But I feel like this really does put a stamp on anybody that truly thinks they can beat the Ravens for that division next year, as long as everybody's healthy, of course, for that team. I just don't think you can think so. And as a Steelers fan, I hope so. I hope that the Ravens go out there and dominate the AFC North next year, so my Steelers can realize early on that they have no opportunity to go win in the playoffs, so they can maybe make a good decision and tank for at least 1 year. Tank, please, for 1 year, Pittsburgh. I just don't know what you're like. Can you do it for a year or two, please? Get a top 5 pick a couple years in a row, and then build your team back up that way. Why is it so fucking hard? I don't know, man. Being a Steelers fan is hard in that way. And again, I'm not trying to say, oh, poor pitiful me, but I'm just like, being stuck in the middle of the NFL standings every year is just as bad as being, sometimes feels as bad as being the Browns. Sometimes. I know that I'm blessed in that way of having a team that's always trying to compete on a year in, year out basis. But come on, man. Please, just for one, the Patriots did it for 2 years. They decided to be at the bottom of the NFL, and now they have their quarterback, and now they're on an upward trajectory to building out their team the way they need to. It just sucks. You're never gonna get the quarterback you need picking in the 20s every year. It's just not gonna happen. I don't know. I don't know, man. Maybe the Max Crosby to the Ravens thing will help, stamp that for me. Maybe I'll have my opportunity, but I just don't think the Steelers are ever going to do it. But definitely an amazing blockbuster deal for the Ravens. Big deal for them that they'll have a premier pass rusher on their team to help fix their defense, on top of the Jesse Minter and Kyle Hamilton and all that. So hopefully for them that'll be a move that can kind of help them take the next step in the AFC of getting to an AFC championship game and getting to a Super Bowl and helping maybe getting their team to where, a guy like Lamar Jackson being your guy when you have a quarterback like that, it's like a top 5 quarterback every year. It's like, hey, the fact that he hasn't been to a Super Bowl yet in his NFL career is definitely looked at as a negative. So maybe getting a guy like Max Crosby to help fix your defense on top of, everything else, new coach and everything, that maybe you can take that next step and get to where you want to go, the promised land, getting to a Super Bowl, and maybe winning one will definitely be a huge deal for the Ravens. So definitely a big deal, I think, for the Raiders. I feel like this has been something you should do for a long time now. You clear up a bunch of cap room, and now you have like all the cap space in the world to go sign your team, sign other players, and build your team up for the ground up. You're drafting your quarterback in Fernando Mendoza, and now you have a couple draft picks to help build out your team even more. I feel like this is a win-win for everybody. I feel like good. And as much as I think Max Crosby is going to ruin my life when he faces the Steelers twice a year for the next few years, I do think Max Crosby is one of those guys in the NFL that everybody would like to go see him play in a winning situation and kind of play some winning, trying to go, what happens if Max Crosby makes the playoffs and can go out and make great plays? Like, I feel like great players like that deserve their opportunities to be on grand stages to go and show what they can do. Even though it's going to be for a team that I'm not necessarily fond of, I can feel at least a little bit happy for Max Crosby to have an opportunity for his talents to be used in a very good situation and playing for a good team with the Ravens. All right, those are all the moves. I know I kind of rambled on for the last hour about them, so if you stuck around to kind of hear me ramble on about all these pre-free agency moves, I definitely appreciate you. We are going to be doing another podcast mid to late next week after all the crazy NFL free agency moves have been made, and Jace will be back on. We have been doing the what do they call? I forget what I called it. Hold on. Over the last few weeks, we have been doing the NFL season grades for the grades for this for all the teams in the NFL this past year. I decided not to do it today because, again, already didn't do it without Jace. Already did it without Jace on the last pod, so I don't want to do 2 pods in a row of doing 2 different divisions without him being here. So we'll go back to doing that on the next pod, along with doing all the free agency stuff. So get ready for that. We'll be very excited to do that once we get back on for another pod here in the next week or so. So that's about it for me. I really don't have anything else to talk about here, so let's go ahead and end it. 1 hour and 30 for me sitting here by myself. Usually it's around 2 hours, so I'll definitely take me not going on for 2 hours, going on too long. So this is where I want to end it here. So if you guys have been listening for a while, we appreciate you. If you're just now jumping on, hopefully you'll like us and enjoy us enough to join us on this ride to talk about sports in the dumbest way possible. If this is your first pod listening, make sure you go and listen to a different podcast with both me and Jace on, so you get a better idea of what this podcast is at its best when you have both of us on, being brothers, being co-hosts, kind of sitting here, making jokes, talking crap, and talking about sports is what we love to do. So make sure you go listen to one of those pods to get a better idea of what this podcast is at its best. And if you decide you want to stick around, if you could do a couple things for us, we'd appreciate if you could. Like our podcast, subscribe to the podcast, rate the podcast 5 stars wherever you listen to us. We're pretty much available on all audio platforms out there, so anywhere you listen to your podcast, we should be fairly easy to find. If you can also share our podcast with friends, family, enemies, anybody you feel like could enjoy the podcast we put out on a weekly basis. 1 time a week being during the off season, and then once things kind of start heating up in the NFL, we'll do 2, especially during the NFL season, we do 2 podcasts a week. So we'd appreciate if you could do that. And then last but not least, if you could, follow us on Twitter and or X, whatever you'd like to call it. At JB Sports Pod is the podcast handle. At Javante Boozer is my handle. And then at Jace Boozer1 is Jace's handle. And that's about it. So you guys have a great day. Have a great night. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for always listening. And we will see you guys here soon. Bye, y'all.